Welcome to the Calder Farmstead, your place for news, analysis, and shenanigans from the American Hockey League.
He's up one by the Condors, Jones, top, other point bends into the slot, a shot and score! Josh Perry, in double, left point long drive, save, Kinetic, what a stop by Matisse with the left pad! Oh, there was a scramble in front of the net, denied was Matt Schichter by a miraculous piece of net binding by Matisse Kinetic.
D-laner from the red line sends it in, Hofer into his net, he stops it, Hofer looking, Hofer firing, toward the empty net, he scores! Are you kidding me? Joel Hofer, a goalie goal in the Calder Cup playoffs!
And now, with 9 minutes gone in overtime, the Bears breaking out. Right side with Fair. Brooks Light cutting to the net. Fair and let's go! He scored! He scored! It's over!
Hello from Portland, Maine.
And Chicago, Illinois.
Welcome to the Calder Farmstead podcast, number 116 for Saturday, October 22nd, 2022. If you're hoping for a podcast featuring a guide on adding compost to soil beds, we are not going to be much help. This is an American Hockey League podcast. My name is Sean O'Brien from StatsTrack and the AHL's only league-wide analytics guy.
And I'm Sarah Avampato from Full Press Hockey and SB Nation's Canes Country.
And as always, we thank you for tuning in with us. And if you're new to hearing what is now Sarah and I talk about hockey, we're going to wrap up our very late season previews by playing a little bit of over-under here with the model. We both watch a lot of AHL games and going to talk about what we see when we watch the film, as well as use some advanced stats to help us break it down. If that's new to you, you may want to head over to the Calder Farmstead podcast feed or YouTube channel, wherever you're checking us out from, and check out episode 0. It's a short primer on some of the stats we're going to be talking about, as well as how we view what's important on the ice. So if you're new to some of the more advanced hockey stats terms like PDO or the point shares model, or newer hockey terms like controlled zone entries, go check that out so you better be able to pick up what we're putting down. I promise it's not that nerdy or technical. It's only 20 minutes, and let's be honest, you wasted 20 minutes hearing the victory speech from the lettuce on Daily Star's live stream. You'll never get that time back, so next time, why not spend a little more time with us, talking hockey. Some quick news here before we begin, as we do have an update on the podcast, which I somewhat promised last time. CC is taking an indefinite leave of absence, and our show is obviously going to change because of that. The great Sarah Avampato is stepping in as our interim co-host, because that's a regular title for hockey, is the interim tag. And we are shifting from our preview recap format of last season to only be once a week. And while we'll still talk about the entire AHL, as well as focus on, a rotating cast of AHL teams, our episodes will be less about diving into matchups and previewing the weekend and more talking about the league and individual teams and players in a more broad sense about what's going on with them, some things they could fix, some things they can work on, what's going well, that kind of thing. That doesn't mean our analysis won't still be thorough or fun, but the scope is shifting a bit. That's pretty much it, I think, for updates. We hope that this works out for you. If it doesn't, though, that's fine. Live your life. All that being said, let's get into it. This is long overdue, so let's try and catch up here. The numbers we're going to produce and discuss here are from a model that I built. It uses data from the last 3 seasons to produce each player's value. For those that haven't played in the AHL in the last 3 seasons, I did my best to convert their most recent season into AHL productivity and then used that number to kind of find a place for them in the model. I then tallied up each team's total strength based on its opening day roster and then simmed the entire AHL schedule, each game 5,000 times. That's how we got the numbers we're going to present to you. It's all based on a version of the point shares model. That's in episode 0 if you're not familiar with it and you want to learn more. But our plan here is to go team by team and play over-under with the model's figure. So let's dive in. As always, we will go east to west, division by division, this time in alphabetical order. Sarah, are you ready?
I am ready.
That's good, because that was rhetorical. All right, let's get into it. First, we'll go in the Atlantic, and we will start with Bridgeport. The Bridgeport Sound Tigers' average points, according to the model this season, is 84. Their playoff percentage is 88%. 5 out of 7 teams make the playoffs. So you're going to see a lot of high numbers here. Their percentage chance to win the division is 16. Oh, And if you look at the distribution, you'll see a pretty wide one here for their standings points distribution. 6% to score over 96 points in the standings, 5% chance that they are 70 points or less. Sarah, we will start with you. Are you taking the over or under on 84 points this season?
I'm going to go with the under for Bridgeport. They snuck into the playoffs last year with that final spot in the Atlantic. Their most significant offseason loss was Austin Zarnik, who put up 37 points for them, but they didn't really make many significant additions either. I feel like Atu Rati's may be the most interesting from a developmental perspective for the Bridgeport Sound Tigers. So I'm going to go with 80 points.
I am also going under, big under here. They're running it back with a nearly identical team, an identical coaching staff. They put up 73 points in 72 games last season. I think they improve, but I'm taking a big under on 84 here. I'm going to say 76, but I'm willing to make a wager here with the Sound Tigers because the model has loved you for 3 seasons now, and I'm finally realizing like, there are shortcomings of the model, and I can't do this in good faith for a 3rd straight year, but I'm willing to make a wager here. I will if the Sound Tigers team in Bridgeport hits 84 points or more this season, I will consider the Sound Tigers dead. I will address this Bridgeport AHL team by their changed name. I will buy a jersey. We'll update our YouTube background, everything. If they don't hit 84 points, the Sound Tigers live on. All right. So I'm willing to, make a wager here because I don't believe in this team, and a lot of other people do. And that's surprising to me, but Sarah and I are on the same side here. So Bridgeport, ball is in your court. All right, let's move on and talk about the Charlotte Checkers. Their average points, according to the model this season, was 90. Their playoff percentage is 97%. The model says they are a 42% chance to win the division. Their distribution is very heavily skewed up. They have a 8% chance to hit over 101 points. That's one of the model's favorite teams here. Sarah, are you taking the over or under on 90?
I'm going to go with the under just to be contrary. Really, the model feels pretty spot on to me. I like what Charlotte's done. I like bringing on Alex Lyon in goal. I think he showed last year with the Wolves exactly how sharp he can be. But let's just be difficult and say 89 points.
Yeah, I'm in the same neighborhood. I'm going to take the over, but very, very slightly. I think they're a better team than last year, and they hit 90 points last year. But I think it's very close. There are a lot of blue line depth that left when Seattle got its own expansion franchise in Coachella Valley. Some parts left going from the forwards too. But they brought in a lot of pieces I like. I think Alex Lyon was a big addition, but I don't know if he exactly fills the same shoes as Joey Decore did. I'm going to take the over because I still think this is a very, very good team. I'm going to say 91 points, but I think the model is very much in the right place here. This team is going to be very, very good. All right, let us talk about the Hartford Wolfpack. Their average points, according to the model, is 77. Playoff percentage chance 67%, 4% chance to win the division. Their standings point distribution significantly lower. It has them, quick math here, 20% to finish 70 points or less. The model not very high on Hartford this year. Sarah, what are your thoughts?
I'm going to go with the over for Hartford. I think they had a fair amount of overhaul in their roster, both with young guys coming up out of juniors, adding veterans like CJ Smith to the team. Louis Dominguez, a good pickup in goal, both at the AHL and NHL level for them. So I don't think that the team that struggled down the stretch last year was really the real Wolfpack. I think they're better than that. So we'll go with 82 points for them.
I'm taking the over here as well. I like what they brought in, and I think the collapse we saw last year, based on the roster just getting stripped by the Rangers, is not real. I think that was a fluke, but at the same point, it also taught me an important lesson that the Rangers do not care if the Wolfpack win. And while I'm taking the over, I think they are still a team that is fighting the last days of the season for a playoff spot in this division, because I think this division is going to be very good. I'm going to say 84 points for them. but I can definitely see a world in which they don't hit that mark. But I'm more optimistic than 77. That's a little bit on the low side there. All right. Speaking of teams that came out on the low side of the model, let's talk about the Hershey Bears. Their average points, according to the model, was 78. Playoff percentage chances were 65% to make the playoffs. They win the division 5% of the time here. Sarah, what are your thoughts on the Hershey Bears?
Yeah, I'm definitely going with the over on them. I just always assume this team is good, no matter what's going on with them. So I'm going to go with the over, even if that's just bias from knowing how Hershey has traditionally performed. I'm going to go with it anyway. They had a lot of departures, but most of them seem kind of inconsequential, except for maybe Phoenix Copley in goal. And I think they'll be fine anyway at this level. Sonny Milano is going to be big for them, provided he can stay healthy. He's going to bring a lot of scoring to the team. So we're going to go with 84 points.
So a little bit behind the scenes here. I'm definitely taking the over. I do not agree with how the model came to such a low number. It is not a big fan of a lot of some of their players that I think it drags unnecessarily from past years it's not quite grabbing the growth. But I can't put my thumb on the scale and be like, oh, well, I think that player is getting weighed down by a bad 1920 season, but other players aren't. Got to treat everyone equally. So it also drags Hendrix Lapierre a lot based on how we translated production from previous seasons that weren't in the AHL. And I don't think that's correct, but it's blanket applied to everyone. We treated everyone the same in those translations. His just did not come out that favorably, but I think he's a better player than that. This is a team that I said in the preview for each individual team preview that they learned lessons last year. They went out and got a lot of good depth so that they don't have to be calling up randos from the E to make this roster get full when, call-ups and injuries happen. Sonny Milano helps them a fair bit, even if he's only temporary and is eventually going to go to the Capitals. I'm very bullish on the Bears this season. I'm taking way over 78 points. I'm taking them at 86. I think they are going to be a contender this year. Speaking of teams that we've projected as contenders in the past, the Lehigh Valley Phantoms, their average points was 83 according to the model. Their chances of making the playoffs are 86%. Again, 6 teams out of the 8 in this division make the playoffs. So a lot of teams high. Their chance to win the division, 15%. Their standings point distribution also pretty wide. 6% chance to finish under 70 points, 5% chance to finish over 96. Sarah, what do you take here?
I'm going with the under. They've made moves that I like, but I don't trust them as a team. Zayd Wisdom is a prospect for Flyers fans to get excited about, so he's going to be interesting. I've watched Cooper Marody torch the rain in the Pacific for years, so I'm glad to get him out east with Lehigh Valley. I think there's some interesting new names in general on their team, but I think the rest of the division's too tough for them to make much progress. So I'm going to go with the under at 79 points.
I'm surprisingly more optimistic, but I'm still also taking the under, but slightly. I like this team as composed right now, but the questions I raised in our earlier preview, the health of it, the Flyers outlook and what that means for call-ups, and Lappy behind the bench make me think the model is a touch too optimistic. But I'm willing to accept that I'm maybe a little weighing those external factors a little too heavily on the Phantoms. But I feel like I've been high on them on the past seasons only for them to let me down for exactly those causes. And I'm going to try and get out in front of that this season. So I'm going to take the under on 83 by a pinch and say 81. But I still think this is a team that has pieces to compete, but there's a lot of the stuff going on the outsides that make me think it's not going to stay that way. One team that has definitely changed a lot this season is Providence. Providence, according to the model here, 75 points on average. They are a 52% to make the playoffs and a 2% chance to win the division. Their distribution doesn't even touch a 96 point or better season finish for them. They are 29% chance to finish with 70 or fewer points. The model is not high on them. Sarah, how do you feel?
I also don't feel great about them. I'm going to go with under for them. We're barely into the season, and Boston already dipped down once into Providence for help on defense because of injuries. The Bruins themselves aren't particularly deep, and Providence isn't deep either. So even if I thought more highly of the team, it's really only going to be a matter of time until Boston has to start pulling away their top players. So we're going to go with 72 points.
I'm also taking the under here. I wasn't high on the team when I thought Mike Riley and Nick Foligno were going to be on it. That was apparently some cap magic that happened, there are parts of the NHL and the AHL in which I probably will never understand. That area of cap management is definitely one of them. Don't get it. Don't understand what that was supposed to achieve. But a lot of other teams in this division added depth. They added quality veterans, and Providence really didn't make up for what it lost in the offseason. It came out, I feel like, very clearly as a net negative in free agency and in the offseason. And none of their prospects really seem poised to, plant the flag this season and establish themselves as one of the better players in this league, or that they don't belong here. I'm taking the big under from that. I'm putting them at 70 points. I just struggle to look at this roster and believe in this team. Another team with big offseason changes after a successful season, the Springfield Thunderbirds. Average points, according to the model for this season, 76. Their chance of making the playoffs was 59%. Their chance to win the division, 3%. Their distribution, very similar to Providence in the sense that the model is not very high, has them centered around between 71 and 85 points, but mostly on the lower end there. Sarah, what do you make of the Thunderbirds?
This one surprised me when I saw what the model did. I'm going to take the over on them. They added Martin Firk, which automatically makes them scarier, especially if you're a goalie or a shot blocker. I'm not going to be surprised if Josh Levo doesn't stick with the Blues and comes down, which is going to give them a lot more scoring. And I think they learned a lot of lessons organizationally from last year and losing in the Calder Cup. So I think that they are going to go a little better than the model with 81 points.
I think if I had to pick, because eventually we're going to track how the model sees their outlook week to week. And it's going to make this fun little chart where it kind of moves around and stuff as the roster changes. And I think theirs is going to make like a big V. Like it's going to start trending down, and then it's just going to shoot up. And I think some of it is because they lost a lot from last season, but they also have a lot of guys that are very clearly bound for Springfield from in the St. Louis Blues organization that are on IR right now. And that makes me think they're going to struggle out of the gate. But I think when those guys come down, they'll be able to finish strong and will make that kind of V shape on the, week by week graph. I'm going to put them at 80 points. I'm taking the over on 76. So we're right in the same neighborhood. I think Springfield is going to go through some trials, but by like Christmas time, maybe mid-January, I think we should see them start to get it together as they get some reinforcements. All right, last team in this division, again, going alphabetically, is obviously the Wilkes-Barre Scranton Penguins. Their average points on the season, according to the model, is 83. They have an 86% chance to make the playoffs. Their chances to win the division are 14%. The model pretty high on them. Their distribution also still somewhat wide here. 5% chance to score over 96 points in the standings and a 6% chance to finish below 70. Quite the distribution there. Sarah, what do you make of the Wilkes-Barre Scranton Penguins?
I'm going to go with just a little bit under the model. They've had a lot of player movement. They brought in some good veteran depth, but this is a team especially that I worry about the impact that the inevitable injury carousel that happens in Pittsburgh every single year. I worry about the impact that's going to have on them. So a little under at 81 points.
I'm actually going to go the other way here. I'm going to take the over, but not by a ton. I like this roster a fair amount. I think they made good offseason additions. They're not a poverty franchise anymore now that they have a full coaching staff. So that's a move in the right direction. I also am a lot higher on some of their not blue chip prospects for the Penguins, but like they're like sky blue chip prospects, like lighter blue, the Pustinins, the Legares, the Philip Hallanders of the world. I'm a lot higher on them. And I think that they're going to have big steps this year. And I think that differentiates them from a lot of other organizations that have prospects who haven't gotten their feet as wet in the AHL. And I think that gives Wilkes-Barre an advantage. Again, I like a lot of the moves they made in the offseason as well. I'm taking the over 85 points. I think that is well within reach of this franchise for a team that I have not been high on in the past. That wraps up the Atlantic Division. We are headed north to Belleville. Belleville, according to the model, 77 points in the standings, a playoff percentage of 57%. They win the division 5% of the time. Their distribution a little lower here. Again, most of it coming around the middle, but it seems like it's skewed a little bit on the low end. Sarah, what do you make of the Ottawa Senators AHL franchise in Belleville?
So the Ottawa Senators rebuild, I feel like, is probably never actually really going to be over. But right now their roster seems stable enough that they're probably not going to be having to dip down into the AHL to get bodies to fill out their lineup. They seem pretty set with who they've got up there. So with some more consistency in their roster this season, I think they can improve on last year. So I'm going to take the over with 80 points.
I agree with you here. Also on not just 80 points, but on the over. I think Belleville, while they lost some things that are important in the offseason, I think kind of like Wilkes-Barre Scranton, their prospects have tastes of the AHL, and I think that's going to make them come in stronger, and we'll be able to see bigger steps forward from guys like Sokolov. I think someone like Lucchini is also an incredibly important, and I also don't think Agazzino's loss for them is as big as it normally would be, because I don't think he was well used in Belleville. The goaltending, I think, might be shaky, but I think Troy Mann can squeeze more out of this team, although I still expect them to ride the roller coaster a little bit and not be the most consistent, but I think they should be able to at least grind out wins. I still think their roster top to bottom is better than a couple other teams in this division, so I'm going to go 80 points as well. Sarah, we are in agreement. Alphabetically next is the Cleveland Monsters, but a similar outlook from the model here. 77 average points in the standings, a 60% playoff percentage. They win the division at 6% of the time. It seems like no one has a 0% chance. So the model very optimistic, taking a rosy look at everyone, but less rosy here for Cleveland. Their standings point distribution has them, 20% of the time finishing 70 points or less. Sarah, what say you?
So all due respect to the Cleveland Monsters, their fans, everything, but this sure is a team of just some guys. I think most of their difference makers have graduated up to the NHL, or they're only going to be doing short stints down in Cleveland. So there's just not a whole lot to get excited about with the Monsters. I'm going to take the under at 72 points.
Under for me too. Way under. Kirill Marchenko is unlikely to stay the whole season in my mind in Cleveland. I think he gets yanked up to Columbus, if not frequently, in good old yo-yo fashion. He's going to go and stick. But him alone is not a replacement for Haluka, Scott, Stenlund, and Gerby. And nobody else really came in behind them or behind Marchenko to fill that void on offense for a team that was not good last year. Nothing else really stands out. I mean, I think Marchenko is going to be very good, and I think he's going to be good on Cleveland. But the team on paper is worse than last year, and nothing about what they've done has made me think that there are outside factors that are going to tick that up. I'm taking the under and saying 68 points. I still think they will be quite bad. From teams that are looking to be quite bad, from ones that's looking to be quite good, let's go to Quebec and talk about the Laval Rockets. Their average points on the season are 88. Their chance to make the playoffs is 95%. They are a 43% chance to win the division, according to the model. Their distribution is incredibly skewed high. They're one of the few teams that has a 5% chance to hit over 101 points. That's insane. None of the outcomes in 5,000 sims of their season gave them fewer than 66 points. Sarah, what are your thoughts on the Rocket?
I think Laval was very good last year. They just ran out of gas at the very end of their run in the playoffs. And I think that, knowing what's going on in Montreal, I think Montreal might be content to leave some of their better players here just so they can experience winning. So I'm actually going to agree with the model.
All right. I'm taking a slight under here, like a pinch under. I think this Laval team is very good, but I I take the opposite take on how Montreal handles them. I think we're going to see more call-ups in what is a blow it for Bedard year for Montreal. I like the pieces they have, but I think keeping them is going to be the problem. And while they have excellent depth on paper right now, an injury here, a long-term call-up to Jesse Ullinen there, and suddenly this team is not as talented and deep as it was 10 minutes ago. I still think this is a fast, talented, and fun team, and I'm praying for another deep playoff run because that atmosphere in Laval was the best in the AHL, and it's not even close. But I'm taking a slight under here. I'm going to say 86 points, but I'm still very high on this team. Another team that has done some stuff in red and blue, the Rochester Americans. Yeah, that was not the best transition for me, but we're making it anyway. We're powering forward. The model has them average points at 82. They're an 80% chance to make the playoff and a 15% chance to win the division. Sarah, what say you on the Amerks?
I'm going to go with a little bit under for them. They've had a couple of solid additions. I really like Cale Clegg, Jeremy Davies, both added on defense. I think in goal, Beck Warm's going to have a nice bounce back season after just a ton of injuries last year, but there's not really much there that I see that's going to make me think they're going to perform much different than last year. So we're going to go with the under at 79.
Again, very similar to how I see this team. I'm also taking the under. I think they will be fast and fun and play it, fast and loose. But the goaltending situation looks to be mostly in the same place as last season. I don't think Malcolm Subban is a big upgrade over Aaron Dell. I do like Beck Warm, but I think he's going to have to fight pretty hard for playing time. I mean, they lost a lot from graduation from guys like Quinn, Peterka. Like, I don't think they're coming back. There's a lot of young talent on this team, but guys like Rose and Kulich, Kisakov, they're teenagers. You can count on one shop teacher's hand the number of teenagers that have walked into the AHL and were impact players from day one. I think the defense will be better. I hope that Rifle finally, has the season that he's had the raw tools to display for a long time, but I got to say under here. I think they struggle still. I'm saying 78 points. A team the model is not high on, the Syracuse Crunch. Average points 79. The model sees them making the playoffs 69% of the time and winning the division 8%. Their standings point distribution definitely a little bit skewed to the lower side here. I can't do math in my head, but a fair percentage of the time they finish with 75 or fewer points here. Sarah, what say you?
So first off, did you know that PC Labrie is still playing hockey? Because preparing for this is how I learned that he is still playing hockey. So congrats to him, I guess. No, I really like their roster, and I'm a little, surprised that they were this low in the model, and also surprised that Tampa's managed to get this many solid younger players while also keeping the Lightning as cup contenders every year. I think this team can accomplish a lot more than the model's going to give it credit for. So we're going to go with the over at 86 points.
I will say, I give PC Labrie a lot of credit because he is one of the hardest working hockey players I've ever seen, because he is the ugliest technique of any professional hockey player I've ever seen in my life. Like, every time I watch him play, I'm like, how does this dude ever score a single goal? Like, his mechanics for skating, shooting, everything are just horrific, but he still manages to make it work because he hustles his ass off. But I am also taking a big over here. They lost a lot in Nash, Houdon, Anthony Richard, but I still think this is a solid team. I think they have a lot of good prospects like Fortier and Gonsalves, and I'm assuming that Cole Koepke comes back at some point, but there are a lot of guys in that roster that look poised for breakouts, that have laid the groundwork. They've looked good in other seasons. They look like they are ready to make that big leap forward at 22 or 23 and show they don't belong here. I think Carrick is a big addition on the back end that helps them immensely. I'm saying 84 points here, but I'm a lot higher than the model on this, especially Alex Barré-Boulet hasn't cracked Tampa at all. I think he's there the whole year, which is silly, but here we are. All right. Another team that is blue and white-ish, the Toronto Marlies. The average points for the Marlies, according to the model, are 82, an identical percentage or identical number to make the playoffs at 82%. They are a 17% chance to win the division. Their distribution also kind of wide here. 4% chance to finish 96 points or better, 6% chance to finish 70 points or fewer. Sarah, how do you view the Marlies this season?
I'm going to take the over with them. The Marlies missing the playoffs last year felt like a fluke. And we know that Montreal invests in, or we know that Toronto invests in their AHL team. They have a guy on a 3-year AHL deal, which like no one does. That said, there's been a lot of changes up and down their lineup, and it doesn't feel like they've got a lot of game breakers in their lineup. They have a lot of people who can just play. So I still think, though, that they can pull off a surprise. So we're going to go with 86 points.
I'm also taking the over. Wayne Simmons, cap mirage. Again, I have no idea how that is even possible, but I think your point is a valid one, that they definitely invest a lot in making sure that the Marlies have solid veterans around their prospects that they're developing to bring them along. I think they understand the importance of a winning team and a winning culture. They're still very deep, even if we're not going to see Nick Robertson there anymore, which makes me very sad because he was fun to watch. But congrats on him for clearly graduating out of the scope of this podcast. But I think they also have a lot of guys on IR, like Amirov and Abramov, who are probably going to get healthy at some points. They're going to be on the Marlies, I believe, and they're going to contribute. I'm taking the over here. I like this team a lot. I say 87 points. My only concern for them is goaltending, but I want to believe in Eric Källgren. So, 87 points. I'm taking the big over there. Last in this division is last year's runaway North Division champion, the Utica Comets. The model not high on them. Their average points, according to the model, 77, 58% chance to make the playoffs, just a 6% chance to repeat as division champions. Their distribution skewed very much to the lower side here. 23% to finish 70 points or fewer. Sarah, what do you make of the chances for Utica to go on another big bender?
So they were, like you said, just an absolute beast last season. This year, they've gone out and brought in a lot of veteran talent to fill out their roster. Losing Chase DeLeo is going to sting a lot for them, but I still think that they can keep it together and be dominant again next year or this year. So I'm going to go with the over at 80 points.
I'm taking the over as well. I mean, they lost guys to graduation, but I think there are some of them that they lost to graduation, that quote unquote graduation. I think we might see some of them back. But there's still good players here who I think can thrive in bigger roles. I think of Arnie Talvidi, Graham Clark. I also have an abundance of faith in Kevin Dineen to make the most lemonade out of lemons as possible of any coach in the AHL. I think Schmidt and Dawes should still both be solid goaltenders at this level and keep them afloat. And like I said, I think there's a good chance to get reinforcements from New Jersey at some point. Alexander Holtz getting healthy scratched is probably not how New Jersey envisions him developing. And until they decide that Lindy Ruff is actually not a good coach, something all of us have known for at least 5 years, that's going to continue, I guess, or they're going to send him to Utica. I think the latter. I'm taking the over. I'm saying 84 points. They are not last year's Utica Comets, but they're, not easily discarded here. There's enough sandpaper and enough good coaching for me to believe they can power through. And that is it for the Eastern Conference. We are rapid pace here, and that's the way it should be, as we are far behind this season preview. But we are going to take a break here. After the break, we will get to the Western Conference. If you're just here for an Eastern Conference team we've already talked about, and this is your jumping off point, thank you for stopping by. Don't forget to subscribe wherever you're listening to us from, so you get episodes in a timely fashion, so that even when we're late, you still are getting our late content somewhat on time. Also, make sure you check us out on social media, links to our social media, other places you can listen to us, our merch store where you can find this sweet hat, and more can be found at our Linktree page at linktr.ee/thecalderfarmstead. We're going to pay some bills, run some ads. We'll be right back. Stay tuned. And we are back from break. We are headed out west, and we are going to start in the Central, going alphabetically, which also means we are first going to talk about the Chicago Wolves. Chicago Wolves, according to the model, average points 81. Woof. playoff percentage, still good. 72% of the time they're going to make the playoffs according to the model. 13% chance to win the division. Their standings points distribution according to the model, pretty wide. Although none at the polls, but we still see an 8% chance that they're going to finish with 70 points or fewer. Sarah, what do you make of the Chicago Wolves this go around?
So I'm going to take the over, but just barely with them. They're very youth heavy. They're led by a coach in his first year in professional hockey. I have faith in them, but I worry it's going to take a little while for all the pieces to fit together. We've already just seen that in their first game of the season, where they're still developing chemistry. They're still trying to figure out who they are as a team. So just a little over 83 points.
I'm also taking the over here. I think they lost a lot from last season's team. Obviously, Podorowski gone. That's a big one. CJ Smith gone. That's another big one. Josh Levo gone. That's another big one. But I think they've added good pieces, and they still have a lot that I like. I think Jack Drury has set himself up nicely for a breakout campaign. I think Brock Sheehan is a good hire, but he's still a first-year AHL head coach, and that means there's going to be some feeling out of, what it's like to coach at this level and all of those kind of, important learning on the job moments. I like this team, but I don't love it yet. I'm going to take the over here and say 84, but I don't think that they are the team that steamrolled Fools last year. They're still going to be competitive. I think they still very clearly make the playoffs, but it's not the same as last season. Teams that definitely are hoping to be better than last season, the Grand Rapids Griffins. Average points 80 according to the model. Their playoff percentage is 66%. They are pegged to win the division 11% of the time. Their distribution for standings points on the lower end here. They do not have any in the 101 to 105 or 106 team. Are you?
So with Grand Rapids, I really like their additions. Veterans like Austin Zarnik, Joel Esperance, Matt Luff, they're all good ads. And some of the prospects coming up through Detroit's system are going to be really helpful for them. I think they're better than last year as they've added a lot more skill to their lineup. So we're going to take the over at 82 points.
I'm going to take the over as well. The model is not a fan of Grand Rapids Utes or its goaltending, which I sympathize with. I like the kids a little bit more, but the goaltending makes me incredibly uneasy. I think they're a more entertaining team this year. I think the veterans they brought in are good pieces, but I think it ultimately it's close. They're going to be better than last year, but I don't know if they can outscore their problems. Especially, I don't trust Victor Brockstrom. I think sending Sebastian Costa to the coast was a choice, but I imagine he'll be back at some point. I think they might be able to outscore some of their problems with the additions you mentioned. Austin Zarnik, Joel Esperance, very good, but losing Riley Barber and closing up the barbershop, not ideal. I'm going to take the over by a point. I'm going to say 81. I think this is one that can blow up in my face should Victor Brockstrom decide that he actually is like a 919, 920 goalie, but I don't think so. I think they're decent, but yeah, 81 points is where I'm putting them at. I'm taking a very tiny pinch in the over. The Iowa Wild, on the other hand, average points 79. Their chance of making the playoffs 60% according to the model, 9% to win the division. A fairly negatively skewed distribution here for their standings points. Most of them on the lower side here. Sarah, what do you think of the Iowa Wild?
I'm taking the under with Iowa. They lost a ton, both in terms of free agency and guys like Marco Rossi graduating to go up to the Wild. Hopefully, most likely. They brought in a lot of veteran help, but none really move the needle for me on thinking they're going to be better. So we're going to go with the under at 72 points.
Yeah, I'm taking the under by a lot here. I think 79 is incredibly gracious of them. They lost a ton from last season to free agency and graduation, like you pointed out. Rossi, Rao, Dewar, Addison, Turgeon, Churchman, and more. I don't think Tim Army is a coach that is going to be able to get more from less. I've always kind of viewed him as whatever the team gives him is what he can, get them to. But the Iowa Wild team that crushed Fools in like the 18-19 and 19-20 seasons were super talented. I don't think Tim Army did much to push them further than they were going to get by themselves. And I think the same thing here. I don't think this team is very good on the roster, and I don't think Tim Army squeezes more out of that roster than what's already there. I'm saying 70 points here. Someone has to be the bad team in each division. I think Iowa is that team in the Central. All right, let us move up north where there are no Parks or Bears. The Manitoba Moose. 82 points, their average total. The chances they make the playoffs, 78%. The chance to win the division, 18%. A very wide distribution here. 6% of the time they finish 70 points or fewer. 5% of the time they finish 96 points or higher. Sarah, I've struggled with this team. What do you think of it?
I'm taking the over on them largely because I don't think the Jets really know what they're doing. I think they're going to keep sending promising players down to Manitoba because they just don't know what to do with them in the NHL. I have to watch the Moose 12 times a year, and they're always annoying to play against, and I think that's going to continue this season. We're going to go with 84 points.
I struggle with this one. I think they definitely have the widest range of outcomes here. You could send someone from the future to right now, and I would ask them, what did the Manitoba Moose do? And pretty much any answer they give me, I'd be like, yeah, that sounds like that could happen. I mean, even just looking at the distribution, 6% shot to finish above 96, 6% to finish below 70. And I have the feeling I'm setting myself up here to have this be our Mea Culpa Award winner at the end of the season, because I just can't find myself putting that much faith in their youths to step up right away and be impact players. I'm going to take the under here and say 80 points. If Chad Lucius and Brad Lambert spend most of the season there and just blow up, I will regret this. I also think their goaltender, I think it's Salmonen, he has all of the markings of someone who could be good, but he also, has a resume that's very similar to a lot of other large goaltenders who came over from Liga that have struggled. I mean, Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen is one of them. There are a bunch others that I can't think of off the top of my head, but I was talking with Jacob Stoller about them earlier, where I'm like, I have healthy skepticism of him as a starting goaltender. And I just can't believe it without seeing it first from guys like him, Lucius, and Lambert. So I'm taking the under here. And I'm sure that when we do the recap at the end of the season, I will be looking back at this foolishly. So let's move on to a team with the identical color scheme, or almost identical. It's very, very close. I don't like putting them back and forth because it's so close. But the Milwaukee Admirals, their average points, according to the model, based on 5,000 sims of the season, are 83 points in the standings. Their chance of making the playoffs are 78%. 19% of the time they win the division. A lot of double digit teams to win the division here. It's a wide open Central. Sarah, what do you think of this Milwaukee Admirals team?
So I'm going to take the over with them a little bit. Again, another team that I have to watch 12 times a year. This team is relentless. They're annoying. And I think that they're going to be greater than the sum of their parts. You look at their roster and there's not a whole ton to get excited about, but I think that they put it together. So I'm taking the over, even if it means that I'm probably going to lose a bet that I've got with the writer that covers the Milwaukee Admirals. That's my own fault. 86 points for Milwaukee.
Very interesting. I am taking the opposite side here and acknowledging right off the bat, there is a good chance this one blows up in my face. Milwaukee plays a very different style than the Eagles did last year, and I think that shifts how effective Jordan Gross can be. I don't think he will have the freedom to play fourth forward a bunch or to jump down into the cycle. I don't think that that's Carl Taylor's style, and I don't think he will have the freedom to do that. Cody Glass not coming back. Rocco Grimaldi definitely is not coming back. Neither is Connor Ingram because I think John Leonard and Mark Jankowski are interesting pieces, but I have no idea what to make of the Askarov and Cooley tandem. I think there's a lot of turnover here, and I'm just not sure how I see all of it coming together in one season. I'm taking the under, and I'm going 81 points. Again, I feel like this one is asking to blow up in my face, but we'll see what happens. One that surprised me from the model is the Rockford Ice Hogs. Average points, 84. Their playoff percentages, 81%. They are the favorite to win this division at 21%. Their points distribution has them pretty firmly on the upper end, which is not what we're used to expecting from Rockford, but they made a lot of stuff happen in the offseason. Sarah, how do you see it shaking out for the newly logoed Rockford Ice Hogs?
First off, that 21% is ridiculous. No, this could go either way. I think either Chicago panics in the middle of their tank job and they start calling up some of the young guys to at least put something interesting on the ice in the NHL, or they really just, double down, commit to the bit, and they really do leave Lucas Reichel and some of those other prospects down in Rockford for the season. I think where things go south for them is after the NHL trade deadline, because we know that Chicago is going to sell off half of their team for picks this year. So once their roster is stripped of parts, it could go poorly. We're going to take the under at 81 points.
Yeah, this feels very much like the Lehigh Valley Phantoms of the Central Division for me. Where I'm like, I look at this roster on paper and I'm like, that should be a good team.
Mm-hmm.
And then I think about all of the outside factors that are going to influence that team. And I'm like, oh, I don't know anymore. I like a lot of what they did this offseason, but I think the Blackhawks boned them in the blow it for Bedard sweepstakes. I think your point about the trade deadline is very, very good, that Chicago is going to sell off everything that isn't nailed down, very likely including Patrick Kane. But I also think there were people who were calling for Lucas Reichel to be Patrick Kane's winger or center in the preseason. And when he got sent down, everyone was kind of like, oh. So I think there is a very good chance that Lucas Reichel, scores, a point a game or better through December. And then the Blackhawks are like, but what if you did this in pretty much the exact same jersey, like 20 miles west or east? I'm not good at geography, but I'm going to take the under here. I'm going to say 83. I still think this is a team that is got enough good parts there, but man, does Chicago seem very poised to screw it up for them. Sorry, Courtney. I did my best. Let's go and mess with Texas here. Their average points, according to the model, over 5,000 sims was 79. Playoff percentage, 66%. Again, 5 out of 7 teams make the playoffs. And if everyone's wondering in their head, how can all of them be over 50%? Well, there are a lot more playoff spots than 50% anyway. Their chance of winning the division, 10%. Their distribution, very much skewed to the negative side. Sarah, do you agree with that?
I'm really going to go with the over, but just a little bit with Texas. I don't think they're really skewed towards that it would be like that poor outcome. They lost a lot in the offseason, but they still have made some solid additions. I especially like Riley Barber. He was great for the Griffins last year. Feels like every time I watched a Griffins game, he was just lighting up the opposition. I don't know if it's enough to push them much higher up the standings, but I think that they'll be fine. 81 points is my guess.
I'm going to take a big over here. I'm a lot higher than Texas on the model. I'm a lot higher on Texas than the model. They are my dark horse to win this division. Like, I'm not saying they're going to. I'm just saying at the end of the season, if Texas wins this division, I will not be that surprised. Especially with Anton Hudobin still in town and seemingly very likely to stay there. He seems to be taking well to that because he's still making the money that's in his contract. So I guess for him, it's all the same. Thomas Nightrod Harley is still there. The barber shop is open. I think the depth is good here. I'm going way over than 79. I'm saying 85 points for Texas this year. I think they are being slept on by the model. And I, for one, will not stand for the thing I built being that down on Texas. That is the Central Division. We are moving forward. We are going to talk about the Pacific Division. And we're going to start alphabetically, as always, with the Abbotsford Canucks. Their average playoff points, or their average standings points, according to the model, 76, 49% chance of making the playoffs, a 2% chance of winning the division. Their standings point distribution is very heavily skewed in the negative. I think they are the model's lowest rated team, 10% to finish under 65 points. That's a woof. Sarah, what do you make of the Abbotsford Canucks?
I mean, there sure are some guys on this team. The problem really with Vancouver somehow being bad, but not really having that many legit prospects at this level is that it's left the AHL team pretty barren. I think the few bright spots on that roster don't outweigh all the other problems they have up and down the lineup. So 74 points with the under.
Yeah, this is not a good team on paper. It's just not. Like, they lost a lot in the offseason that if they would have kept those guys, I was much higher on this team last year. I think you see good steps in development from some of the Utes. I think Danila Klimovic is capable of surprising people this season. I'm hoping the goaltending takes steps forward because, God, it feels like they at least have earned some, free passes in starting games. I'm bullish on Jeremy Colleton behind the bench, but man, I just can't see this team with this depth succeeding to a high level. Like there's not a lot here. They have a lot of good, they feel like a team that is like 80% third line grinders and good penalty killers, like John Stevens, Waters. Like I like guys like that, but they're role players. They're not top six forwards that can score consistently. I'm taking the under. I'm going to say 72. I am not high on this team. Let's go over to a team the model views similarly. The Bakersfield Condors. 76 points, the average, 53% chance to make the playoffs, 3% chance to win the division. A very similar standings point distribution for the Bakersfield Condors comparing to the Abbotsford Canucks. Sarah, your thoughts?
This is another one that really surprised me. I think their most significant departure was Cooper Marody, and they've gone and added a lot of depth to make up for him being out of the lineup. I've always liked Cal Pickard in goal, and I think that he can keep this team in games if they struggle. So we're going to take the over for this one with 84 points.
I think Marody is a huge loss for them. I mean, he was our best AHL forward 2 years ago, and he was very good last year. But I also think the model I know some things that the model doesn't know, that Savoy, Lavoie, and Desharnais are on IR. They're very likely to come back at some point and be assigned to Bakersfield. And even if they are not assigned to Bakersfield, the numbers will say that someone from Edmonton then has to come to the Condors. The model also really dings Cal Pickard for, I think it was 2 seasons ago, where he was very not good in like 3 games. Which I don't agree with. But again, I can't be pulling one case out and being like, but you get special treatment from, no, that's not how it works. I'm taking the way over here. I think this is a much better team than 76 points. This is the furthest departed I am from the model. I'm giving them 10 more points to say 86. I think this team is good. And I think that they're going to get reinforcements and that they're going to surprise at least the model. 86 points, 10 points over what the model says. I have set myself up to look dumb when they fail. Let's go over to last season's, technically speaking, division champion, the Calgary Wranglers. Their average points, 77, 59% chance to make the playoff, a 4% chance to repeat as division champions. Their distribution very heavily skewed down, which I'm surprised by. Sarah, are you surprised as well?
I am. This is a team that I'm taking the over with. They were scary last year as Stockton. They're going to be scary this year as Calgary. They've added some good veteran depth. They've got leadership with Brett Sutter. In net, Oscar Dansk is fine at this level in goal if Dustin Wolf is out for any reason. This team is still going to be good. They're just in Calgary now. So over with 85 points.
I'm over. I know this team lost good pieces. Justin Kirkland is gone. Byron Frazee is gone. It's not going to be the same team as Stockton last year, but wow, the model is very low on guys like Cole Schwindt, which I do not accept. Dustin Wolf is still the goaltender here and has very little upward mobility, despite being very, very good. He is not likely to unseat Dan Vladar and is very unlikely to unseat Jacob Markstrom. I also love this coaching staff. They were our coaching staff of the year last year, and I have incredible faith in them. Over 84 points. I'm shocked that this is the output that we got from the model, but it is correct. There was not a computing error. I did double check when I saw numbers like that and just, okay. From one fire-based team to another, we go to Coachella Valley and the new kids on the block. The model loves this team. Their average points, 88, a 93% chance to make the playoffs. They're the highest percentage team to win the division at 31. They are skewed heavily to the high side here for their standings points distribution. 17% chance to finish over 96 points. Sarah, what do you make of this team?
I'm going with the over, like almost solely because of Andrew Podorowski. I have seen what he can do, and I think that he's a great ad for that team. There's a lot to like about Coachella Valley, both players, the staffing. I think they're on the right direction. So I'm going to go with 89 points, a little over the model.
Little over. I am in the same mind here. The Firebirds are one of the model's highest rated teams, and I think it's being conservative. There's a lot of proven veteran talent here that we know what we're going to get from them, and a coaching staff that I like a lot at the AHL level. I want to make sure I specify that because I have seen what Disco Dan can do in the NHL. And yeah, great AHL coach. Still, I am going to take the over here and say 90 points. That's not a big step over, but 90 is a lot of points to look at a team in the preseason or the quote unquote preseason and be like, that's a 90-point team. Like, there aren't a lot of them in the AHL every year, but I think Coachella Valley is very well set up. Let's move on to the Colorado Eagles. I didn't even have a good transition there. We're just going forward.
It's another bird.
It's another bird. This one is not on fire, although it doesn't seem to understand what color it is, which that's a whole different thing. The average points according to the model based on 5,000 sims of the season, 80 points on average for the Colorado Eagles. 71% of the time they make the playoffs. They win the division at 7%. Their distribution skewed a lot lower. Still has some good momentum upward, but not what you would expect from the team from last year. But this is a very different team. Sarah, what say you?
I'm taking the under with Colorado. They lost a lot of major players from last year. And, I know they had great playoff success, but I think a big part of that was that they ran up against the Ontario Reign, who suddenly had no blue line because of call-ups to the NHL. I like some of what Colorado did in terms of additions, but none of the guys really feel like game changers to me. So we're going to take 77 points for them.
Yeah, they lost a lot in the offseason. Kiefer Sherwood gone, Jordan Gross gone, Dylan Sakura gone. And while they have a lot of good young kids, none of them feel to me like they are poised for a breakout, except for like maybe Martin Count. And that's like the rest of them, like, I don't know, like nobody on that team that's, supposed to be making developmental milestones really excites me. I don't trust the Eustis system, and top to bottom, it's not as good as last year. It's just not as nice. I don't think they get reinforcements from the Avalanche either, really, at any point. And again, I don't think you're going to see jumps from the Utes. They feel very much like they have a lot of guys like Shane Bowers that are just stuck kind of where they are and unable to really move forward with their game. I'm taking the under. I'm saying 76 points. And that is one of the ones I feel more safely about. Like, I don't know. I don't feel good about the Eagles this year. The Henderson Silver Knights, though, very different story. The model has them at 82 points. 81% of the time they make the playoffs. They win the division 13% of the time. Their distribution is pretty all over the place, but very evenly spread out here. 8% of the time they finish under 70 points. 5% over 96 points. Sarah, what say you about the Henderson Silver Knights?
So I think Henderson's going to be better than last year's team. Brendan Brisson alone is exciting to get to watch him. A concern for them, I think, is going to be goaltending, given how thin the depth is both at the AHL level and now the NHL level, with Robin Lehner being out for the season. Just one injury in the NHL is going to cause a whole cascading mess for the Henderson Silver Knights. So I'm going to take the over by a little bit with 85 points.
Another really wide range for me here, and the model too. That's a pretty balanced but very wide range of outcomes. A lot of youth on this roster too, but most of it I feel like isn't as raw as it is in other places. Guys like Dorofiev and Miromanov, who are not necessarily Utes, but are somewhere in that prospect to graduate, area, have already shown what they can do at the AHL level, whereas Brendan Brisson, not so much, but I feel better about his game translating than I do a lot of the others that fit into his kind of mold. I think sending Isaiah Seville to the coast over Patero was utterly insane, but we talked about that. But top to bottom, like, this looks like a very solid team. I like a lot of the additions that they made in this season. you're right that one goaltending, groin pull is going to send this team into possible chaos. But again, they're already starting Yuri Patera. So apparently that's not going to be how I thought it was going to go. I'm still taking the over here, though. I have a lot of faith on the talent that's there. I think guys like Brisson are in better spots to transition to the AHL than some of his contemporaries. I'm saying 85 points as well. We agree, down to the dollar value here. But now we're going to go to the team that you cover 50% of the time, the Ontario Reign. Their average points for the season, 83. Chance to make the playoffs, 85%. They will win the division 16% of the time, according to the model. Another wide distribution here for their standings points, but fairly right around the middle there. They don't seem to be leaning too heavily one way or the other. Sarah, what say you?
I'm taking the over for Ontario. They've already shown in the first couple games this season that they're still a fast team. They still can score at will, despite the change in coaching and all really sort of the turmoil they had in regards to coaching over the past couple seasons. They're still playing with that same identity. They're bringing back largely the same squad. Martin Ferk is the biggest departure, and that is a big loss for them. And they're probably going to have to outscore any problems that they have once again. Although I do like what I've seen from Phoenix Copley. He's gotten most of the starts so far. So we're going to take the over with 86 points.
I mean, losing Ferk hurts. And quite frankly, I still don't trust the goaltending, including Phoenix Copley. Bears fans are very high on Phoenix Copley and have been for years that he's just not been that good. He was better last year, but he's getting to a point where I'm just age is going to start catching up with him. I don't know if it catches up this season, but I also haven't seen the best of results from him over the course of the last 3 seasons. I think, there's still a lot here that I like. Healthy seasons from guys in critical places in their careers. Turcotte, Madden. I think that makes me think that they will find a way. I'm going to take the over here, even though I am not that high on this team in general. I am going to say 85 points. Let us go to San Diego. No, I'm not going to do the bet. All right. We're just going to go to San Diego here. Their average points, according to the model, 83, 82% chance of making the playoffs, an 11% chance of winning the division. Their distribution skewed fairly upwards compared to a lot of the other teams, a little narrower. Sarah, what say you about the San Diego Gulls?
I'm going just a little over with them. I do like a lot of their additions. Chase DeLeo is really strong at this level. Sasha Pastrujov is a prospect who I think is really interesting, who's going to be joining this team. And really some of the young players for San Diego should be taking that next step in their development. So we're going to take 84 points for them.
This is a tough one for me. I think they lost a lot in free agency, but they gained a lot in free agency. They also have Roy Sommer as their head coach, who is, in my opinion, and has been well documented on the show, well past his prime. But I think there's enough talent here to overcome that. I'm going to say the over here, but man, do they need some steps forward. They need Lukas Dostal to look like the goalie of the future, which I have been saying he is for, I feel like, 2 seasons. But that Grimaldi edition is a big one. I'm going to go 85 points in the over. All right. I think one of the model's least favorite teams here, the San Jose Barracuda. 75 points on average, 50% chance to make the playoffs, a single-digit 3% to win the division. Their distribution is ugly. They have no chance, according to the model, in 5,000 simulations to make 96 points or better. But an 11% chance to finish 65 or lower. Sarah, what say you?
Well, first off, the Barracuda have goaltenders now, which they really didn't last year. Eetu Makiniemi was great in limited showings with the Wolves last season. He got shut down around Christmas because of injuries. But if he can play like he did there at the beginning of the season, where he was putting up some of the best numbers in the AHL, he's going to help the Barracuda be competitive. So I'm taking the over. They're still not going to be great, but they'll be better than last year, probably. 78 points.
I don't know if it's possible for them to be worse than last year. Like, they were terrible, but wow, what a low ball number from the model. I mean, do I think the CUDA are a good team? Not really, but they're a lot better than 75 points. I mean, Dell and Makiniemi should be a much more solid tandem, let alone whatever Strauss-Mann gives them, which that's Strauss-Mann's name sounds like an alter ego from Archer.
It's amazing.
I think Andrew Agazzino is solid. I think the kids, and they have a ton of them, which is why I think the model is so low on them. I think guys like Bordelot can contribute right away, but I don't think that they will be impact players day one because, again, guys that are teenagers and 20-year-olds, like people under the legal drinking age in the United States, do not walk into the AHL and just become, point per game players. It very rarely happens. There's like a handful of them from the last decade that have managed to do it. And it's like Mikko Rantanen. Do I think any of them are Mikko Rantanen? No, I don't. I still think that this is a better team, despite the fact that I don't like their coaching hire. I'm going to say 79 points. I don't know if they make the playoffs, but they will not be the tire fire they were last season. One team that is projected a lot better this year is Tucson, because reasons. Their average points, 81, 77% chance to make the playoffs, a 10% chance to win the division. Their distribution is not that great, though. So I'm not sure how we quite got to this place. They don't have a chance they have 2% chance to make over 96 points, but none over 101, 9% chance to finish 70 or fewer. Sarah, what do you say about the last team on our docket here, the Tucson Roadrunners?
I mean, speaking of tire fires, sorry, but no Tucson. The Arizona Coyotes somehow have managed to be continually bad forever and also have no prospects really at this level to show for it. There's like one name interesting there. There's just not a lot to get excited about with the Roadrunners. So we're going to take the under at 76 points.
Yeah, this is a nope for me. 81 points. Nope. Laurent Dauphin, Jean-Sebastien Day, Adam Cracknell. Those are good veteran additions, but Matias Maccelli is gone. The defense that was very bad last season is still mostly intact. The Coyotes are also in fully 2 feet in the blow it for Bedard sweepstakes, which typically means call-ups, extended looks for guys. I mean, they had Boko Amama playing NHL games last year, so I don't think that changes. You're going to see the bottom half of this roster get filled up by guys from the coast frequently. I've taken the way under here. I think this is still a very not good team. 75 points.
So that's it. We've covered all the teams. That is it for this show.
Preview portion here. Sarah, any closing thoughts on the season?
Any closing thoughts, man? I'm excited. It's going to be interesting. There's some teams in here that are going to be surprising, and it's going to be a blast. There's an outdoor game. I mean, that's fun, even if it's Cleveland.
I mean, they'll be the most respectable Cleveland-based professional sports team to play in that stadium this year, so I think that's a positive.
Yeah.
But yeah, the one thing I like about the AHL is it very much has college football feels to it, where at the beginning of the season, you don't know what young guys are going to just show up out of nowhere and crush it. You don't know what teams that you thought were going to be good choke throughout November and then don't make the playoff. Like there's a small but dedicated fan base for each team, and tailgating is fun. There are very good college football parallels here, but without any of the NIL nonsense. So that all being said, I am excited for this season. I look forward to having to look back on these and be like, what was I thinking? So that being said, Sarah, let's call it a day.
All right, let's take it out. That is it for the show today. Thank you so much for watching and or listening. The Calder Farmstead is part of the Full Press Radio Network, so you can listen to this and several other great hockey, sports, and sports entertainment programs at www.fullpresscoverage.com. Just click the podcasts drop-down menu in the top right portion of the website and enjoy.
And if you guys are enjoying the Calder Farmstead, please make sure you subscribe so you get episodes in a timely fashion. Also, if you're listening on Apple, Spotify, or Amazon, please rate and review the podcasts. Or if you're watching on YouTube, click the little bell, click subscribe, like the video, comment, press all of the buttons. Go nuts. But I will say your ratings and reviews help other people find the show, and they help us improve the show. You can also follow the show on social media at Calder Farmstead on Twitter, at The Calder Farmstead on Instagram and Facebook. Links to all of that and more, including our merch store where you can buy this sweet hat, some sweatshirts, maybe a phone case. That can all be found on our Linktree page at linktr.ee/thecalderfarmstead. If you cannot spell the Calder Farmstead, I cannot help you. That's just, you're going to have to figure it out. Big thanks to Adrian Drake, who made our brand new theme music. You can find him on social media at AD_dysfunction. That's AD_DYSFUNCTION. So you can make music for you too. Sarah, where can the people find you?
So my name, if you don't know me already, Sarah Avampato. You can find me representing Full Press Hockey on Twitter at Right Said Sarah. It's WRITE Said Sarah with an H. You can check out my writing at Full Press Hockey, where I talk about the Ontario Reign, or over at Canes Country, where I talk about the Chicago Wolves. And Sean, where can people find you?
I'm Sean O'Brien. You can find me on Twitter at Sean O'Brien81. That's SEANOBRIEN81. I'm also on Instagram at Sean O'Brien_81. I do the jersey of the day over on my Instagram accounts to show off the utterly insane number of hockey jerseys that I own. You can find all of my stats work, but not this model quite yet, but soon, but not yet, on my Tableau page at bit.ly/data-dump-and-chase. All lowercase, all one word. Thank you guys so much for tuning into the show. For Sarah Avampato, I am Sean O'Brien. Please dump and chase responsibly.